You should expect more of them. Marty and I, Secretary, have worked hard. But the folks who really have been remarkable are individuals, many like yourselves, who came in from the private sector. Chris Klump, I think of, John Brooks, Inma Hernandez, who decided that this was an opportunity, maybe once in a lifetime, opportunity to make a difference in areas where we thought we could do better. And just to set the stage for this, when these individuals, and someone like Chris Klump built Collective, it was a billion-dollar business, decided to do all the things you have to do to come into government, and has taken charge of thinking differently about the whole negotiated strategy. And here was the argument that was made on MFN. The president's been very vocal about this for many years. It's something inherently unfair if a product, especially if it's made in this country, put in the same bottle, in the same packaging, when sold in Europe is 1/3 the price as when it's sold here. It just doesn't feel right. Analogous to NATO, when you are defending yourself against an external threat, everyone's got to ante up, and if it's not done fairly, then at some point, in this case, the United States said, that's enough. You guys got to put more money in, 5% contribution of your GDP, or we're not going to fund the entire kit and caboodle anymore. It's similar to an internal threat, cancer, autoimmune problems, issues that could threaten humanity. It's a global crisis illness. We have to fight it globally, and folks who can have the most influence should put up a little extra, but there shouldn't be a 3-to-1 ratio. And the United States pays for more than half of all drug innovation. This most favored nation drug pricing came about because pharmaceutical companies voluntarily recognized it wasn't sustainable. And I think that's an important message here, and a theme of our administration. The president we can pass legislation. It tends to be sometimes clunky, powerful, but not always as nimble as you'd like it to be. There's rulemaking abilities that FDA, CMS, and all our agencies have. Again, it takes a while and sometimes not as nimble. Or you can have industry do it, and if they know that everyone's watching and they're desirous of making their industry sustainably, enduringly innovative and successful, they'll respond. And we've seen it with the most favored nation drug pricing now, with a leading US company, Pfizer, a leading European company, AstraZeneca, the fertility business, there's more coming, again, to answer your question. But I think part of it also is recognizing there's the other areas like prior authorization, which is a widely disliked process, but effective at reducing costs, but a process that interferes with the covenant that doctors have with their patients. And private sector insurance companies have taken that on and made a commitment to dramatically change a fixable problem. As long as people felt they had to fix it, they'll fix it.
Yeah. And affordability is also the area of priority for you, Dr. Makary. From an FDA perspective, how are you thinking about addressing this issue? We saw the announcement around biosimilars. Maybe you want to talk a little bit more about how you think about the role of regulation and guidance, as you've described, like being clear so that product developers know what's coming and we're really able to meet the needs of American people.
Great. Well, thank you, Esther. It's great to be here at Milken, my first Milken conference. So
welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And
they leave scars.
I see a lot of familiar faces here. And so, yeah, we don't directly set drug prices at the FDA, but we work in very close collaboration. The part of the job I did not expect is the part that I enjoy the most, and that is to be able to talk to Dr. Oz and to the head of the NIH and the secretary every day. And we are not talking about football, although sometimes that comes up. We are talking about how to lower drug prices for everyday Americans and how to do meaningful research and deliver more cures that are more accessible to everyday Americans. Look, we've both been at the bedside, and we've had hard conversations where somebody asks us, is there anything out there? And we've had to say, not that we know of. And that's a very hard position, and that has an imprint on your mind that lasts a long time. And so we are driven towards this goal of more cures and meaningful treatments and more accessibility, and part of that is affordability. And there's probably no greater priority right now that we have in the health side than to lower drug prices, and we're getting it done. We're both surgeons, and so we like to get things done and do things with the information we have at hand, that we have to do that every day at the bedside. So on the biosimilars side, we need more competition. We need more biosimilars. Right now, it takes an embarrassing 5 to 8 years for a biosimilar to come to market. we announced we are cutting some of the requirements to reduce that down in half, 2.5 to 5 years, and you're going to see more biosimilars. We're also reducing the cost required to bring a biosimilar to market by about $100 million or more, depending on the medication. That, for some companies, it's only $200 million to bring a biosimilar to market. Now, biosimilars, just so if you don't know, are basically the generic version of the expensive biosimilars. So look, healthcare inflation is growing, and it's been growing every year out of pace with inflation in the general economy. The fastest area of healthcare spending growth is drug spending, and the fastest area of drug spending is these new expensive biosimilars. They're only 5% of the drugs, but over half of the spend. So we are bringing these generic equivalents, and so I think that was a huge win, and I think everyone's going to benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that we've been talking about throughout the conference, and Dr. Oz, you and I have talked about this as well in prior meetings and discussions, is that in the US, we spend $4.9 trillion on healthcare, and our outcomes do not match peer countries, right? On average, even life expectancy about 4 years below peer countries. And so the work that you're doing on the affordability of medicines absolutely contributes to that. We're in the middle of an open enrollment period for ACA. We're thinking about how Americans are covered, what is the affordability they see with their plans. How do you think about this overall picture? Like, where are we in the country relative to all that we are spending, the outcomes that we're deriving, and how do we just get everyday Americans to get access to coverage and ensure better health?
Well, we run the risk in the current tempest of becoming one massive healthcare system with a small country attached. The growth rates in the private sector, commercial sector, which we do not regulate, HRSA is in that space, is about 9%. Medicare, same number, roughly. Medicaid, a little less growth, but still growing at a very healthy clip, even after the one big beautiful bill issues are addressed. And the ACA, likewise, growing quickly. It was flat for a couple of years, in part because there were so many people being added to the rolls unknowingly. These are people that probably were fraudulently added without their knowledge by duplicitous brokers. But, and I say that, by the way, because we estimate 6 million out of the 24 million in the ACA don't really know they have those policies or don't use them. Only half the people in the ACA file a claim. Most people, if they have insurance, will, they'll buy their medications with it, they'll do something with it. So these are numbers that have been alarming to us. So part of the problem is the actual cost of care is going up. Pharmaceuticals, hospital costs, actually the fastest growing at CMS. But these numbers are addressable if we deal with some of the underlying underpinning issues within the system, which is why I'm optimistic. As an example, obesity and obesity-related complications explain about a quarter of the total healthcare bill. They're about half of all chronic illness. And so that's a big number. We think administrative costs probably 12% of the total $1.75 trillion that CMS administers. Big number. Fraud, waste, and abuse, probably about $100 billion. 8% roughly of the total bill. So these are big chunks that are addressable, and we've taken steps to do some of these things. I'll give you an example. Next year, we projected that the average Medicare beneficiary would pay $40 extra in premiums. That's a lot. It's $200 now. Go to $240. Unless we dealt with skin substitutes. How many of you know what skin substitutes are? Put your hands up. We spend $23 billion, you don't count, Marty, please, ridiculous. $23 billion projected next year on skin substitutes. Some of these are wonderful tools to close the cubitus ulcers, on non-healing malleolar ulcers and chronic venous insufficiency. But there's some good reasons for this industry to exist. Obviously, that's why it was there. But it went from being $250 million to $23 billion projected next year in 5 years. And much of it was done fraudulently. Because FDA doesn't regulate skin substitutes. So these guys could sneak in with products that really don't seem to be much better than the other products. And because in that space, doctors get paid 6% of the price of the skin substitute, they prefer the $5,000 version, not the $100 version. Skin substitutes in Europe are $40, by the way, $40. So we're paying $5,000 for the same product. You can see why sales forces get involved, companies start to rev up, and on Friday evening, we shut that down with a rule our traditional annual rule that will no longer allow that after January 1st. So there are things we can do that historically had not been done that we're taking action on. And I do think because of that, and because of some of the things we'll talk about later in this conversation, there's a lot of optimism to be had. But we are not going to be able to get Americans happy with the healthcare costs that they're paying unless we actually reduce the cost of healthcare.
Well, data modernization is a big part of how you're thinking of doing that. You have a platform, you've worked with a lot of the private sector companies where you focused on, can we bring the tech ecosystem to play? Can we enable better use of AI? Can we inform patients to use their own data to pursue healthier lifestyles, nutrition, diet, exercise? You made those announcements. How is that going? How are companies responding, even to your RFI that you announced in May, allowing so many different stakeholders to respond? Did you get ideas that can make a difference, exactly what you talked about, bending that cost curve?
Esther, the response has been overwhelming. I'll put some numbers on this. We had an event at the White House on the 30th of July where we brought the first 60 big tech companies, all the big companies you could probably name off the top of your head, were there signing a pledge to Marty, me, Jay, the secretary, but the president hosted it. The president was the reason they came. And they pledged to do some of the things that have been asked of them for years. Data interoperability, transparency, tools to help Americans use their own health information more effectively. The conceptual leading concept is that you own your data. You paid for it. Your medical data, therefore you should be able to get it, use it as you wish, give it to an app developer if they want to, or an app company that's developed a tool to help you manage your diabetes or your renal dysfunction or whatever the problem may be. And we want to get that ecosystem to be healthy enough and robust enough to grow and prosper and allow tools for Americans to better their health. And this digital transformation is dependent on a few realities. The first is you need companies to get involved. So those 60 companies that started the ball rolling now have ballooned to 450 companies who have signed that pledge. We have another gathering next week with these large companies to start showcasing some of the things they've been achieving. We also have to, government has to build some guardrails. For example, how do I know who you are? How do you authenticate that you're that person who's getting those medical records? We're helping build those identifier systems with things like Clearly. You know, there are commercial companies in this space. We're working with a bunch of them, ID.me, et cetera. We need a provider directory. How do you know your doctor practices in the hospital that you go to? Is that a doctor actually someone who can give you care in a healthcare plan? We are helping build a national provider directory that aggregates some of the companies that have been trying to do this. But again, the government will do it for free, just to make it, make sure we have something that companies can crutch on. And there are many who have participated in contributing to this. But most importantly, we're able to recruit top-tier engineers. When Marty and I entered HHS, I don't know how many engineers you had, but we had 13 at CMS. 13 engineers.
Yeah. Amy Gleason talked about this late yesterday afternoon.
Yeah. So Amy is leading the charge, who's just a whiz at this, and runs U.S. Digital Service and U.S. Doge. But when she came to me and said, I have 13 people to run 46,000 employees and contractors, what that really means, Esther, and this is a critical issue, is you have someone from HR at the government managing a government relations person at the tech company. Like the engineers aren't talking. And that's how things happen that really bother you. When we came in there, one of the first things we did was do an audit of a lot of our contractors. We fired about $3 billion worth of contracts, but we got rid of a contractor who had a 5-year contract we'd spent $200 million on, not one usable line. And when we fired them, do you know what they said? Nothing. You caught us. And that was it. And you have no recourse. And so these aren't tolerable. They're not going to happen anymore. We have tools and most importantly, people who are passionate about this. And what Amy has done more than anything else is hire people. Hire engineers, top-tier folks coming in off the sidelines for short periods of time, come in for 2 years, fix the problem, and go back and change the world in the private sector.
And Dr. Makary, modernization is also a priority for you. You've issued a number of announcements as well, food safety, rare diseases. You've talked about AI, ELSA, and the use of that in enabling even the first review of a product at FDA. So as you're looking across all of these different initiatives, what's the greatest opportunity to improve patient experience?
I think we have to challenge deeply held assumptions. If you don't care about the operations of the agency or the impact you can have, the job is very easy. You can just show up at cocktail receptions and have a conversation. The job is very easy. If you actually want to challenge the assumption that it takes 10 to 12 years for a new drug to come to market, which is, in my mind, crazy. It is crazy that it takes that long, and it's crazy that we have come to accept it. And the investor community just wants predictability, and if it takes 12 years and it's predictable, then they end up accommodating. We have to challenge deeply held assumptions. So we are doing things now to eliminate animal testing. There's no need for animal testing. We have great computational modeling. It shaves off 6 years to a year. It's going to lower drug prices also. It lowers R&D costs. You can almost shave off that process by a year. And by the way, animal testing is not very good. 90% of drugs that pass animal testing don't pass in humans. So we got to use modern technology. We've got the AI tool now for all of our scientific reviewers. The pilot was amazing, and after the reviewers used it and said, wow, gosh, it's doing in seconds what would take me days, I said we want it agency-wide for all reviewers by June 30th, and I'm happy to report that we delivered ahead of schedule and under budget. We're going to keep going. Phase 1 trials, why are they going to China and Australia? We should be more competitive. We can set up protectionist strategies, but ultimately we have to be more competitive on those applications. Why do we have phases done in separate giant applications? You don't go to college after you apply and then apply again for your sophomore year with a 100,000-page application. That's a real number, by the way, from the size of FDA applications. And then apply again for your junior year and apply again for your... We can use new technology to run continuous trials and have the regulators look at endpoints in the cloud. We've got to try new things. We have our National Priority Review Program to get decisions out in weeks. And so we have, for example, a New England Journal article just came out. We were talking about this for childhood deafness, a congenital form of childhood deafness. A New England Journal study came out, 12 kids. You can't do a giant randomized trial. Okay, we got to be real and have regulatory flexibility. 12 kids, I think it was 12, it was about 12, and 3 of them had a complete cure. They got hearing to normal, and then another 7 or so got an improvement. That's amazing. And so we called that company. We're not in a receive-only mode. We're not going to be a stingy librarian as a regulator. We reached out to the company and we issued them a voucher immediately. Within hours, we were on this to get them a voucher to get a review within weeks. Okay, I want to see kids have their hearing back. And so we're going into the pipeline. I will go directly to the reviewers and ask them, are you seeing anything in the pipeline, in animal studies, in phase 2 trials that look amazing, game changers? And if so, we're going to partner with that company and yet keep our review impeccably independent.
What has the response been to this plan? Are you getting excitement? Obviously, we had some applause around the room for that. What has the response been from the community? And how are you involving stakeholders? How can organizations and companies or even patient advocates reach out and say, yes, this is a disease condition that my child or my family member is struggling with. What's in the pipeline? How do we go through this process and really adhering to what you laid out as meeting public health needs?
Well, I think Dr. Oz and I will tell you there's nothing like being at the bedside and proximate and listening to patients. Take, for example, the conditions that parents struggle with their children. We can do trials in a 10-year randomized control study of red dye number 40, but you know what? You can also listen to parents when they say the child was on dyes, like most kids, just consuming a lot of these petroleum-based food dyes. We eliminated that. The child's behavior dramatically improved. A year or 2 later, they got back into them because it's hard to police. And then the child's behavior regressed back. That is data, okay? It's not a randomized trial, and it's not conclusive, but we can listen to patients and families, and we can learn. Those are data points.
Yes. Well, I should ask you about the leadership at FDA. Obviously, it's been in the news, and I'm sure many in the audience are interested in hearing your perspective as well. How are you feeling about the leadership structure at FDA? You've had some shifts, obviously, with the recent announcement with the CDER director. What should we anticipate as a community in terms of each of those different divisions?
Yeah, so we got rid of the fiefdom culture that was there before I came. The 6 major centers at the FDA, we have 16,000 employees. We regulate 20% of the US economy. We've got offices in 50 countries. It's a large organization. And the centers were running their own secret governments. The commissioners were sort of put out to pasture, you know, kind of like, well, we do what we want, we'll fill you in and you can take some credit. So we broke that up. So we've got a teamwork culture, and we've got a great teamwork culture, teams working on everything. We're going to be announcing a bunch of new drug reforms in the next 3 months. These are reforms a giant team has worked on. So we're going to continue that teamwork culture. And the FDA is strong. I want everybody to know the FDA is going to meet all of its targets with the user fee deadlines. We're going to meet all of our funding goals. And the FDA has been strong. The trains are running on time. They're running hopefully faster now that we are going to cut the idle time, not cutting corners on safety. We're cutting the idle time in the review. We're using AI. We're modernizing. We're eliminating red tape. We're trying to deliver more cures and meaningful treatments to the American public. That's our #1 goal. And healthy food for children. And the FDA is going to continue to be strong.
Yeah, excellent. Well, this is a question that's relevant for both of you. We are in the middle of a government shutdown, so really appreciate you being here with us, and it's also an incredibly busy time. How are you both experiencing that within your agencies? Maybe Dr. Oz, you can respond to that. How is that shutdown impacting CMS?
We actually copied the FDA, and I just want to echo what Marty said about the agency. He's been a superstar as a colleague, and one thing that we focus on a lot at Health and Human Services that Secretary Kennedy highlights continuously is breaking down walls. Because when we have artificial barriers that hinder our ability to regulate effectively, Marty will make a decision that I don't know about, I can't act on it for that reason, and you suffer. And there are many things we're doing, like the biosimilar announcement that Marty did, again, at the FDA, but it frees up CMS to make some decisions because we were brought into the discussion process in ways that are effective. I think we'll talk a little bit about your report and some other ideas we have about innovation in general. But to specifically answer you, the FDA, because of their user fee structure, had the ability to keep some of their employees. It turns out CMS also has user fees. Researchers have to pay for the data that we collect through Medicare and other sources. And so we had stockpiled a little bit of money. And although in the first month of the shutdown, we didn't use that, we realized that there were opportunities and went through the traps. And starting 2 weeks ago, we were able to bring back the 50% of CMS employees who had been furloughed. That's important because so much of what we have to do, like acting, taking the One Big Beautiful Act, Working Families Tax Cut legislation, and putting that to work, you need people. And if you want to find a solution to improve the Affordable Care Act, you need people, like actuaries, insurance experts. It doesn't just happen because we talk at a high level. You need people in the weeds. And I'm pleased to announce today that the $50 billion Rural Transformation Fund, the competition amongst 50 states, the applications were due today, and all 50 states submitted, which is a real coup for the governors. But I'm also proud of my team for able to continue that process on time because it was statutory insisted upon that it happened today. We will give $50 billion away by the end of the year. And to put that in context, only about 7% of Medicaid money goes to rural America. That's about $19 billion a year, call it 20. Giving rural America $10 billion more a year for 5 years, a 50% increase in the amount of money they get, is transformative and will allow us to right-size the healthcare system in all kinds of innovative ways. And many of those innovations will spill over to suburban and urban America as well. And we figure out better ways for big hospitals to adopt smaller institutions, to use telemedicine more effectively, to improve working conditions so that you can recruit more people in the healthcare space or train more nurses. All of these spill over to help the entire healthcare system.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's really a tremendous opportunity for states, obviously, for those who are in geographically diverse parts of the country. Thank you for referencing our report as well. I've talked about it ad nauseum at this summit, which is we released a new report on the future of U.S. biomedical research and innovation, and we talk about U.S. competitiveness relative to the rest of the world. And what we talk about there is like how can agencies work together? There's so much data at FDA, there's so much data at CMS. There's an opportunity for us to use that data to generate insights and hopefully have interventions that actually can improve health. So as you think about your two agencies being here together, you collaborate in such a significant way. Are there opportunities for you to work even closely together where you have your legislative mandate?
I mean, I'll just say that that's the best part of the job. So we have a massive overhaul of big data. We should be looking at drugs immediately upon approval. Immediately. We shouldn't be discovering 5 years later that Vioxx may have killed 38,000 Americans, or 15 years later that OxyContin may have killed hundreds of thousands of Americans. What are we doing? We should, with technology today, we should have eyes on a drug to look at safety and efficacy immediately in big data and monitor signals. So we're getting new data sets in, and they're going to be useful for CMS and FDA. And so this is where the collaboration is fun. When we announced leucovorin, with a new indication for some types of autism. That was something that we talked about. We did it rapidly. Like I said, we don't mess around. We like to get things done. They've been talking about banning one food dye for 35 years. And we came in, we initiated removal of all 9 petroleum-based food dyes within weeks. So we like to get things done, and with leucovorin within weeks, we had that literature summarized. We made it available to doctors who are treating patients with autism who find it helpful. So we like to get things done. We made that announcement, label change. They immediately announced at CMS that they're going to pay for it. And so these are the areas where we can actually have a huge impact. We are now talking about how we can consolidate the review of drugs, devices that come out of FDA, where the CMS has to decide whether or not they're going to cover it. There's another long process. Well, we just did it, an in-depth scientific review. Can we help inform their review more efficiently? So this is the fun part of the job.
Yeah.
Esther, I want to, again, applaud you for the reports. One thing about Mike is, and the team that you have, Esther, is that you do your homework.
Yeah.
And I was looking through it just very briefly, and I noticed one thing that I would add to it. Which is hard to, it's hard to add something to Mike Milken and to this wonderful organization. But Marty and I have been working together, because you asked about collaboration, on important things like when they approve it, how do we make sure there's post-marketing surveillance as outlined. That's true for devices as well, those of you who are in the device space. Right now, that's sort of fractured, and Marty's been very loud about this and actually pushing CMS appropriately so we can make it a seamless process as it is with pharmaceuticals. But we have a major national security crisis in America in that we don't actually make any of the raw materials for the medications that our country runs on. And these are medications that are not the expensive branded products. They're the basic routine medications we use for antibiotics for infections, the tools we use for metabolic syndrome management, cardiovascular management. Hospitals are very dependent on these, and folks who have critical illnesses as well. And we have got to onshore products. That will happen because the FDA is louder about some of the things it can do, like highlighting risks of importing products from other parts of the world. But it's also going to happen because CMS works through funding mechanisms to make it worth it for people to start developing products here. And I don't want to get into all the details because much of this is still ongoing. It is fast-paced. But if you're looking for opportunities, that's one I would look at for sure, is what can we do to make available in America key starter materials, APIs, and ultimately, obviously, finished product as well in ways that are safe for the American people. And one good example of how we will incentivize this is Trump RX. How many of you know about Trump RX?
Yeah. Okay.
Just to make, because it looks like about 20% of the audience. The Trump RX is a place where you'll be able to go for any medication you're on and see the least expensive place and way you can buy it. And we're not going to sell the products. It's a government-owned entity. We'll send you to the companies who are putting their prices up. It'll often be the manufacturer. And if that manufacturer is a generic drug company and they're made in the USA, we're going to mark that it's made in the USA. So you know it's a product that probably has a lower complication rate in terms of its processing and producing, et cetera, less likelihood that fraudulent fellows got involved in it. And I just want you to know these are the kinds of opportunities that exist out there that you'll be seeing. And Trump RX will launch this calendar year.
Yeah.
And will be functional by early next year.
Yeah, exciting. Well, we just have 1 minute left as we wrap up. I did want to ask you maybe one substantive question and then a quick wrap up, which is around clinical trials. That's been an area that we've been focused on at the Institute at Faster Cures for the last 4 years since the pandemic, because it was just absolutely abysmal, what our infrastructure in this country to respond during the pandemic. How do you think about clinical trials? Dr. Makary, certainly we saw that we have sites in East Coast, West Coast, but the middle of the country really did not have clinical trial sites. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, it's a major disparity in the United States. And if you look at the success of Operation Warp Speed, you have to ask, why can't we replicate that if somebody has a potential cure for a type of cancer? And so later today, we're going to be announcing the next round of products that will be the recipients of our National Priority Review Voucher Program. If a product is in line with the President's national priorities, that is moving manufacturing to the United States as a national security issue, making drugs affordable in line with what Dr. Oz is leading with most favored nation status pricing, and meeting an unmet public health need, or our focus on medications that reduce downstream healthcare utilization. If there's a medication that reduces the number of dialysis sessions you need or the number of insulin shots you need, in my mind, that's a national priority. We can't keep going down this road of just throwing good money after bad into healthcare. Politicians talk about different ways to finance our broken healthcare system. In this administration, we are interested in talking about how do we fix our nation's healthcare system, and that means addressing the health of the population and healthcare utilization, and that's part of the work with pricing. We're not interested. I'll speak on behalf of a group of us. We're not interested in 1 or 2% reductions in drug prices. We're interested in massive reductions, like the announcement that Dr. Oz made a couple weeks ago from the Oval, taking down the price of a medication from $243 down to $10. That's the kind of reform I think we're really focused on.
Excellent. All right, what's your takeaway? Dr. Oz, what do you have as a takeaway for this audience? What should they walk away with?
We are open for business. Come work with us. Either call us if you've got good ideas, but more importantly, send your best, your brightest, your youngest. Have them come work with us. We've got lots of opportunities to make America a healthier nation, and this, I do believe, is a generational opportunity to do that.
Excellent. Dr. Makary, any final thoughts?
Thank you, Esther. No, it's great to be here, and thank you for having us. Our goals are very simple: more cures and meaningful treatments for the American public, increased affordability, and healthier food for children. And let's be honest, we have to rebuild public trust coming out of the pandemic. Public trust got cratered from 71% of the public, this is a JAMA study, 71% of the public trusting us as doctors and hospitals just before in 2019. Now it's at 40%. That's a 31-point drop. We have got to rebuild public trust, and we're going to do that by doing common sense things, cutting red tape, and by showing humility. If we don't know the answer to something, our answer should be, we don't know. And that's the answer we're going to give people.
Yes. Well, thank you both for your incredible leadership. On behalf of this country, your success is the success of the rest of the world. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for being here with us.
Great. Thank you.